Released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2004, Tales of Symphonia was an instant classic for Bandai Namco, fastly becoming the best-selling Tales game in the franchise before Tales of Arise came out, and one of the best-selling GameCube titles as well, totaling over 1 million units sold worldwide and becoming a player's choice title on the Nintendo GameCube, sporting an impressive 86 Metacritic on Nintendo's purple little box. Players and critics alike applauded the smooth 60 frames per second gameplay, local co-op for up to 4 players, and fantastic story with a likable cast of characters and plenty of cutscenes. And while Tales of Symphonia Remastered on the Nintendo Switch is essentially the same game, it seems like this was a very low effort port to bring over this GameCube RPG masterpiece. Now, this version of Tales of Symphonia isn't actually the remastered GameCube version. It seems like it's the remaster of a PS3 version, which already had some issues from its GameCube port, like not having 60 frames per second, for example. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the good and the bad reviews for Tales of Symphonia Remastered and kind of get down to the bottom of what went wrong and what happened here. So far, there isn't a lot of reviews up for the game. The PS4 version has about 4 or 5 reviews and a 70-something average. The Nintendo Switch version has the most reviews, so we're going to base it off of that for right now. That has 7 reviews and it has a 69 average when it comes down to it. So not nice whatsoever when it comes to your review score. That is a yellow mixed score, so that's not where you really want to have it, especially when the original version on the Nintendo GameCube was pretty much 20 points higher. So definitely not something that you want to see there. So let's go and go over some of the good reviews first, because there are a couple good reviews out of this 7 here. So Hardcore Gamer gave it an 8 out of 10 and had this to say about the game. Tales of Symphonia is still one of the biggest highlights in the series, with a fantastic assortment of characters, some simple but enjoyable combat, and great story to keep players invested throughout. What hurts is that this remastered version has glaring issues that need to be fixed. It's far from making it impossible to recommend. In fact, we still absolutely would for those who haven't ever played it before. But without autosave and with multiple recorded crashes experienced, it's hard to tell people to run out and pick it up immediately without proper patches to work out the bigger issues here. With fixes to address the problems, Tales of Symphonia Remastered could easily be considered another fantastic port on modern systems that we hope to continue to see more of from Bandai Namco. So the crashes from Hardcore Gamers seem to be the biggest issue with this version of the game so far. Next up is from Nintendo. They gave it a 7.8 out of 10 and had this to say: a mediocre remastering job, but one that serves to rescue an exceptional game, with the addition of a multiplayer mode and portability that allows it to be played more comfortably than ever. So they do give it some bonus points for still having that multiplayer mode. I guess you can do some like local co-op and stuff like that, so that's good when it comes down to that. But unfortunately, there's some issues with some other stuff with the game. They say some mediocre remastering. So there's issues there. It's not necessarily at its best. It's running at a lower frame rate than the GameCube version of the game. Like, that's one thing that you never want to see. You never want to see a remaster and you're bringing a game back from a game that's 20 years old at this point, or going on 20 years old, and somehow it's not running at a better frame rate and has more issues and more crashes than the game back when it first came out. Heck, even the PS3 version. So that's definitely a problem there. Now, next up is from Video Chums. They gave it a 7.3 out of 10 and had this to say. So this is the first mixed score here with the 7.3. Tales of Symphonia is a classic action JRPG that's as enjoyable as it's ever been, as long as you can sit through the load times and weren't expecting the sequel to be in this package. It's a fan favorite for a reason, and I'm thoroughly enjoying playing it through for a 3rd time. So this person kind of sees that, yes, this game is awesome. It's a fantastic game, but the issues are what's causing it to have this score. Because if it was fixed up, if it was better, it would have easily gotten more than a 7.3 from them, because he said that he's having fun and that he's playing it for a 3rd time, you know, so that's awesome. And obviously the sequel, for those who don't know, there is a direct sequel to Tales of Symphonia. that's out there, but it's not included in this package. So for example, another Bandai Namco game that's coming out this summer, and that is Bandai Namco Nintendo, that is Baten Kaitos. That gets 1 and 2 packed in there in the same package. One of them's a prequel to the other games. So unfortunately, they don't have that double pack in there, which would have been nice and probably would have lightened the blow, even if both games necessarily weren't up to par when it comes to the remastering. If they included both of them in there for 50 bucks or 60 bucks, I think people would be like, okay, well, not the best remaster, but you get both games, you know, but it's only one of them, you know, so it is what it is there. Now, we do have one from multiplayer.it, but they don't have a full quote yet here, but they gave it a 7 out of 10. Next up is from Vandal. They also don't have a quote, but they gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Now, Nintendo Life, they gave it a 6 out of 10 and had this to say about the game. Though the story is compelling, the character building is satisfying, and there's lots of content to experience, Bandai Namco's near non-existent efforts to scrub out the rough edges of this 20-ish-year-old game definitely hold it back from greatness. Things like the stiff combat, dated visuals, and awkward writing limit the appeal here, which makes this remaster feel like a missed opportunity. It's easier to recommend this to those who have nostalgia for the original and want to relive those memories, but it's tough to say whether newcomers should pick it up. This is far from the best action RPG on the Switch, and it's arguably not even the best Tales game on the Switch, because there is Tales of Vesperia, which is a much better remaster of the 360/PS3 version of the game. That one definitely did not get the marks that this game is getting. Now, we give this one a light recommendation, as its positives do outweigh its negatives, but with the caveat that you should probably wait for a deep sale or buy it used. There are much better RPGs to play on the Switch today, and this one doesn't quite deserve a spot near the top of your list. So Nintendo Life, they've obviously covered all the RPGs on the Nintendo Switch, and they've done an okay job at reviewing games from what I've read off of their review roundups and stuff. So I think that they're okay with that respect. But I do feel this when it comes down to what they have to say here. Like, the content is good there. Obviously, the visuals are going to be dated, but they're talking about the remastering of this game. If the remastering wasn't up to par, they didn't do a good enough job of taking those dated visuals and bringing them back in some type of way. So for example, I think that the game that they're talking about when they're trying to compare it here without naming it is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. That is the game that they're talking about, because one, you have a GameCube game versus a PSP game, and the PSP isn't stronger than the GameCube overall. It's definitely not stronger than the GameCube overall. It's a little bit weaker than a PS2 from what I know, at least. And the fact that both of these games are both older games from the mid-ish 2000s, and Square Enix brings it back, does a full remaster, improves the frame rate, stabilizes it, does everything, the graphics. So you take that game that didn't look great in today's day, and then you make it look so much better, and then you charge 50 bucks for it. Final Fantasy, the Crisis Core game, was 50 bucks on the Nintendo Switch, and then you compare that to this here, and it's the same price, and it's from the same era, and they definitely don't go the extra step. So I think that's the game that they're talking about when they talk about, you know, other games, action RPGs. And yeah, if you look at it that way, it's hard to recommend it if you haven't picked up Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Like, if you haven't played that game, obviously you're trying to pick between the two, that's the game that you probably go out there and pick up over this game. But it's still one of those things where, like, hey, look, it's got some multiplayer, it's got some good things about it when it comes to the story and everything. Like, the story is good, but you don't finish off everything because it doesn't have the sequel in there. So it's just unfortunate that a little bit more effort wasn't put into this, considering what we've seen on the Nintendo Switch, other action RPGs that have been remastered, stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles and also Crisis Core. There's been some great remasters that have came out and have went a little bit further when it comes down to it, and this just doesn't seem to be doing that, which is very unfortunate. And the last review that we're going to have here, guys, is Noisy Pixel, and they had this to say. They gave it a 6 out of 10. Tales of Symphonia is a brilliant action JRPG that has set a precedent for its genre. Even all these years later, its engrossing storytelling, vast array of side activities, character interaction, and layers of combative options all add together to make it a must-experience adventure. Yet, as a remaster, this specific release fails to hit the mark, ultimately providing a lackluster and disappointing resurgence that could have been so much more. So I think that's the biggest thing here, you have a great game. Even in all of these reviews here that gave it a 6 and gave it a 7 and gave it some of these lower scores, they all said the same thing with the game. It's unfortunate that there wasn't more effort put into this remaster, that there wasn't more effort considering what we've seen even from Bandai Namco themselves with certain remasters, even from what we've seen from them with Tales of Vesperia, for example, although that's more of a modern game, obviously from the 360 and PS3, probably easier to port over and remaster. Still though, the fact that they weren't able to get that done is very unfortunate, because the game to me is one of the best, if not the best Tales game out there. I think that Tales of Symphonia, Tales of Vesperia, those are like my two favorite Tales games out there, and it's unfortunate this one wasn't handled as well as it could have been handled, and also for 50 bucks. So it's not like this is a $30 game or anything, so it's very unfortunate on that. But I do think that there is some ways that they can do some things to help out here. I mean, no autosave is definitely, that's kind of sucks, especially when the game can crash. So I think the first thing of order here is to make sure that you get the game patched up to where it actually works properly. I think that's the first thing that they need to do with that, because the game can be so much better. It almost kind of reminds me a little bit of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because there's a good game underneath there. It's just unfortunate there's some of the other issues that are plaguing it. Now, if you go over to the PS4 version of the game, there's 4 reviews and it has a 72 average, but I'm looking through the critic reviews as well, and they all pretty much kind of say the same thing as what the Nintendo Switch says. So it's not like you're going to get much better frame rate and no crashing and all of that on the PS4 version or the Xbox version or any other version of the game. There's just some issues as well. So for example, Push Square says close to 2 decades later, Tales of Symphonia Remastered is a reminder of how neatly crafted the original GameCube and PS2 title was. Bearing a few rough edges, this is still a great action RPG full of charm and character. The only real downside is that the remaster itself leaves a lot to be desired. So once again, they say the same exact thing here that a lot of the other reviews are saying. They gave it a 7 out of 10, had 3 mixed scores and 1 positive 80 score, or 8 out of 10 from the PS4 version of the game. So very unfortunate they weren't able to do a little bit better with this. I do want to read one more though from everyeye.it. They gave it a 6.5 out of 10 from the PS4 version of the game and had this to say: well, on one hand, we understand and appreciate Bandai Namco's decision to bring Tales of Symphonia to as many platforms as possible in order to allow new generations to rediscover one of the most important chapters of the franchise. On the other hand, we strongly believe that such a lazy remastering is not the most effective nor the most respectful method to repurpose a great classic of the past and celebrate its 20th anniversary, except for the Switch version, which is for its part can leverage portability. If you have a PlayStation 3 or in any case a gaming PC, there is not a single reason why you could prefer the new remastered to the package entitled Tales of Symphonia Chronicles, which is in addition to the base game also includes its direct sequel. In short, this second remastered is indicated only to anyone who does not have the aforementioned platforms and to those who wish to use them in handheld. So they're pretty much saying this is a bad deal. Based on what they've done here, you can get the other thing and actually get both games included in there. So only if you're trying to play for portability. I mean, outside of that, you might as well go back and play it before, play it on PC or whatever the case is, which you've already done, right? So it's very unfortunate overall. And as someone who loved Tales of Symphonia back in the day, man, I was a big Tales of Symphonia guy. Tales of Symphonia was one of those games that I played on the Nintendo GameCube. Heck, I even played it with friends sometimes because I thought that was that fun. Now, I don't know if they had fun playing it with me because they weren't as big of RPG guys as I was, but the fact that you can even do that in the first place was awesome. And I never really even thought to maybe ask my brother to play the game with me whenever I went and visited him and all that. But either way, it was still really cool. And once again, I'm not a big frame rate guy or anything like that. It's not like every game needs to be 1 million frames per second. But the fact that you're doing a remaster and somehow you don't bump that up to 60 frames per second, I mean, when the original GameCube game was that's just unfortunate and disappointing because that's what I'm used to. While I did play a little bit of like the PS3 version and all that, I never really got through all of it. So all of my memories and nostalgia are with the GameCube version. And honestly, I think a lot of people's are with the GameCube version. That sold over 1 million units on the GameCube. That was originally the best-selling Tales game of all time. It sold more than the previous ones when they were big on PlayStation and stuff. So I think that a lot of people have memories from that GameCube version and that frame rate and that smoothness of the gameplay. And when you don't have that, that's very unfortunate with this new one, especially on the Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure what happened when it comes to the ports of the games, but to me, they should have probably spent, maybe if you had to cut down platforms, if you had to cut down what you were trying to do with some of the stuff, but get it to where it can be like the GameCube version. I think that maybe even the code was lost. I know I've heard some people talk about that when it comes to the GameCube code, and they weren't able to take that and they had to go from the PS3 or something or port that over. So there's been all sorts of issues, but something happened with this game because there's crashing and there's other issues as well. So it's not just frame rate, there's other things. So it's just unfortunate, and it is what it is at this point. So check out some of my other videos, guys. We've got a lot of RPG content on the channel. I actually just did a 20 must-buy Nintendo Switch RPGs and more. So if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. Or if you're into Metroid Prime, I talked about Metroid Prime 2 and also Metroid Prime 3, because Metroid Prime Remastered, which is a really good remaster, recently came out. So we talked about that, the potential for those games. So check out those videos, links in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next video. Peace.